How are you doing?
Good, not too bad. Ready for week 4, I think, for the Cincinnati Bengals. They've been at practice the last couple days. Some notable names on the injury report on Wednesday afternoon. Jamar Chase was limited full go on Thursday as we're recording this, said his shoulder feels great. Trey Hendrickson is definitely one I'm going to monitor just because right now he's been out the last 2 days with an illness, probably sick of carrying the defensive line right now. But overall, we do not know his status for game day. Maybe Friday we'll get an update on if he's going or if he's not. And then BJ Hill's still out. Sheldon Rankins still out. Tanner Hudson still out. Obviously, not as impactful as BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins right now, but definitely huge names when you think about the defensive side of the ball that needs some stops.
Not ideal. Um, I don't know how concerned I am about the Hendrickson one. What is the illness? How bad is this illness?
He doesn't
But
need practice, though. I will say Trey Hendrickson is excused from practice if he would need to be.
yeah, that would be the biggest one to actually miss a game. Like if they actually, obviously. But I think more than you might even think. You just go like, yeah, Trey Hendrickson's a really good player. No, I think if Trey Hendrickson misses this game, this could be a disaster because I mean, he is the only pass rusher on the team that has done anything at the moment.
Yep.
So you can't give a veteran NFL quarterback the time to throw that Jaden Daniels had. I mean, you can't give any quarterback that time to throw, but you'll get another situation of a guy absolutely tearing up your pass defense. Guys can't cover forever. Similar, like guys
Mhm.
can't block forever, so you got to get the ball out. The opposite of that is if guy can't cover forever, you got to get home so that ball comes out. Um, Defensive backs and offensive line, despite being entirely different bodies, are very relatable positions to me. Just you have to survive for 3 seconds. You're doing a difficult job. You're mostly moving backwards rather than forward. The other person knows, you know what, that one's not true. You know what you're doing probably better than the defensive line does, at least on run blocks. But still, moving backwards, passing is terrifying. Uh, so just think of it that way, where if it was the opposite and your quarterback had 10 seconds to throw, I mean, you'd always find the open guy.
Yeah,
But I
that's
don't expect
definitely.
Trey Hendrickson to miss the game. So,
Yeah, I'm expecting him to be out there, and you know what? They're gonna have Chris Jenkins again for game 2. What does Lawrence Guy look like with a full week of practice on this team? I mean, if you went back and you watched the tape, obviously not a huge difference maker, but it's someone out there
so
outside of some of the other players who can't put pressure on the quarterback. And Sam Hubbard, obviously we were aware he was dealing with this during training camp. He still has a really bad hamstring injury. It's if you were doing the ratings of it, one of the worst ones as far as a 3. So that's not ideal for Sam to be out there. The only good news I can offer, if they can just get out of Carolina with a win, you are going to get Miles Murphy back. McKinley Jackson, I don't know if they throw the rookie out there in week 5 against the Baltimore Ravens, not to look too far ahead, but just some reinforcements are on the way. Maybe BJ Hill will be back next week. Zach Taylor did say that he kind of feels a little more optimistic on Hill's side of returning. He didn't practice both days, so I would be a little surprised if BJ goes on Sunday, but maybe another week of rest will help him to be determined on Sheldon Rankin's outlook and when he's going to return with a hamstring injury. But yeah, I mean, honestly, you go up against this Carolina Panthers offensive line, and it's been pretty good for the Panthers. I feel like Bryce Young was pretty much the reason that they were struggling offensively, and then they make the change with Andy Dalton. Will he have another 300 plus yard game going into the Cincinnati Bengals game? But they can hold up on their offensive line, and for a team that's struggling to get pressure on the quarterback, that does make me a little nervous in this matchup.
yeah, I think that this Panthers offensive line got called a lot of names when Bryce Young was in there.
Mhm.
And then they found out, oh, quarterbacks can kind of cause their own pressure, cause their own sacks as Andy Dalton sits behind it. And it looks like a really nice offensive line. They spend a lot of money. Now, I don't think the players that they signed were, the best guards available. I've always liked Damian Lewis a bit as an above average guard, but he got paid. Robert Hunt kind of similar situation, above average guard. He got paid like a top guard, but that is what you do in free agency. Actually, I've always thought Corbett was pretty solid. Uh, so him moving to center makes a pretty good interior. You got Taylor Moton on the right tackle. He's been there forever. A lot of guys that you don't look at this offensive line and go, oh, that's a weak point. That's a weak point. That's a weak point. Just picking out guys like, yeah, that guy, he wouldn't be starting if he wasn't drafted by them. Although that could be true about their left tackle, which is still Icky Iguana. So that would be the one that's like, he hasn't been very good in his career in pass protection. Very fun player, drafted very high, very talented player, but he hasn't been a consistent pass protector. That might be the one guy you look at, but they probably know that too, where they're going to give him some help. Haven't watched this offense much. Watched a little bit of the Andy Dalton stuff, and he was throwing that ball really well. I think he got away with a couple of things that were like, did you know that was there, or did you get a little lucky? And you got to get some luck going your way when you have a game like that. He could have another game just like that, in my opinion. I mean, if Trey Anderson misses, I think it could be a really nice Andy Dalton game. And what is really his would be his first revenge win to me,
Yeah.
because the first one for the Cowboys, that was against Brandon Allen. I don't know. I feel like he wants to beat Joe Burrow. He wants to beat the guy they replaced him with. And then the second one, the Bears one, people point to that, but Justin Fields played 2.5 quarters of that game. And the final one, the Saints one, he lost. So I think
Mm.
there's still some motivation. Like, I feel like there's still at least some motivation to be like, I got to beat the guy that they thought was better than me, that they wanted to replace me with. At least in my head, he's got some John Wick to him this game.
Yeah, we'll see what it looks like for Andy Dalton. It is 1 p.m. Andy Dalton's prime slot where he
That's
is
right.
really good at football. It's really unfortunate that it's not a primetime game, I think, with the way the last 3 games have gone for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is obviously for me when I think about having life left in the season and what they can build off week to week. And it doesn't get easier because you see AFC North opponents soon the following week, actually, with the Baltimore Ravens. So this one is a huge game for the Bengals. And I truly do think just one win could get a little more life into this team because if you look at the offensive numbers, this team pretty good. They can run the ball. Their offensive line is probably one of the best that Joe Burrow's had. Yes, Amarius Mims will be getting his first real start in this game, but overall, you get T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase out there. They're utilizing the tight ends. Eric Gall has been a really fun surprise, and I think that's going to continue with this offense when you think about the weapons. Mike Gesicki, they use him in the receiver role at times too. So I think, this offense is it can be fun, and sky's the limit of what they can do. But the defense needs to show up in this game. And it's honestly just a crazy, wild story if you think about week 1 to week 2, what they were able to do against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I know BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins started the game. Both were playing a little bit injured towards the end. Sheldon Rankins, I want to say finished it, but was still dealing with the hamstring injury. And then you played the Monday Night Football game and you just needed 1 or 2 stops. And one stop, honestly, they would have punted. And the Cincinnati Bengals would have had a chance to go and walk one off. But unfortunately, this is where they're at. This is their reality. They're 0-3 on the season. And with an offensive performance that we saw on Monday night, you hope that continues. But if you're Joe Burrow, man, you got to keep putting up 33, 38, 40 points just to, win all of these games because your defense can't perform. Or is there a little bit of hope with some of these guys getting healthy when you think about this defensive line going forward?
Yeah, I think there's hope with the guys getting healthy that they could be at least just like a below average pass rush unit without Trey Hendrickson, compared to being probably the worst unit in the league without Trey Hendrickson. I will say, I think there's some hope in general for the defense. We've ragged on them a lot, and they've deserved it for this past week, but they did do a good job against Kansas City and against the Patriots too. I mean, hell, the Patriots under 20
Mm.
points, you should lose that game. That's on the offense. Kansas City, one of the best quarterbacks of all time on the other side of that ball, and they did enough to win that game, and then the offense didn't finish their last couple of drives to put it out of reach, or finish in the red zone to put it out of reach. So I do think that there should be at least some hope where they've played well this year. It's easy to get on them because last week was an all-time bad performance, but one terrible performance doesn't mean that it's going to be that bad again. Now, maybe it is until you can get Rankins and Hill back, who are at least like
Mhm.
solid, fine cromulent pass rushers compared to what they've currently got on the interior. But I do think there's just some optimism. Just be like, yeah, what if Monday night was just they were so worried about Jane Daniels running the ball, which they did a pretty good job stopping
Yeah.
his runs, other than the touchdown, the scrambles and everything. They did a pretty good job of stopping those. But they're just so worried about that. They gave him too much time. They never adjusted. And then when it's Andy Dalton, they don't feel like they need to do that, and they're able to at least force the ball out within 3 seconds rather
Mhm.
than the 5 seconds that it felt like Jane Daniels had. Uh, and they do a good job of defending the Panthers. Like, I don't think that's a scenario that I go like, wow, the Bengals defense held the Panthers under 20. Like, I could see that. I could also see them giving up a lot of points, but I also think we just patience. It's hard, but just patience. Let's see how bad this week is for the defense without probably without BJ Hill, Sheldon Rankins, before jumping to the wow. They're going to need to be the 2014 Saints, or they're not going to need to be, but they will be the 2014 Saints, where they if they don't score 35 points, they lose this game.
You know what I think it makes a good offense? And Dan Pitcher talked about it today with some of the red zone issues. And we've talked about it before with the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, goodness, you can go into week one and Joe Burrow was like, look, I had happy feet. They didn't do enough in that first game. That's just what happened. Week two, Joe doesn't fumble the ball, and maybe they capitalize on one of those field goals versus or a touchdown versus a field goal, they win in Kansas City. You look in, week three, what if they would have scored a touchdown versus the missed field goal or kicking a field goal? Game looks a little bit different against the Commanders, even though they had a crazy offensive performance too. You look back on those issues, and that was still something that Dan Pitcher talked about today is we've got to work on the red zone stuff. Because if this team can nail the red zone and capitalizing on in the red zone, they're going to be they will continue to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. When you think about these weapons, when you think about the protection Joe Burrow has, he's getting comfortable out there. He had a great night on Monday Night Football. He had a great night in Kansas City. Unfortunately, fumbling the ball. If they win that game, we probably talk a little more about what Joe Burrow did at Arrowhead. We talk more about Monday Night Football and Joe Burrow having a fantastic night. It's just if they fix the red zone, this offense can be one. It could be fun. It could be fun with all what they're being able to utilize with the different weapons and different position groups, run game, tight end, wide receiver, and it's just fun to see. And unfortunately, it hasn't added up to wins, but the potential is there.
Well, it's certainly fun to watch on Monday. Out of everything you could be upset about, I don't think you could be upset about the offense, where then including a very terrible performance against New England, they're top five in most advanced metrics, including I think first in success rate and third in expected points per drive. They don't play super fast, so they might not be there in total volume of stats, but in efficiency stats from down to down, they've been extremely good. And a lot of that's come from a really cool, diverse, interesting run game to watch, where we'll see if that continues with the switch from Brown to Mims, Brown with the unfortunate injury, because I do think if there's an area that you see a drop off, it would be in the run blocking unit. I think Mims will provide at least similar, if not better, pass protection, but he is not there as a run blocker right now. Where I think
Mhm.
Trent Brown, despite the athleticism concerns, does at least have the veteran knowledge and ability, and he has some movement, not movement, but he has some people moving ability as well that we haven't yet seen enough of with Mims. Not to say Mims is always terrible in run blocking, just if I'm picking an area that he looks like a rookie, it's that. It's not the pass protection to me. I know there was the sack, but that to me, I still feel like he might have just not known that Kappa was pooling, and whether or
Mhm.
not that is true, it's a bad set. But if a guy pools, and maybe this is just a coaching point for he wasn't dealing with this a lot. Georgia, I don't remember a lot of pooling offensive linemen, their pass protection, play action, pass protection. You have to 100% be inside, not outside. And he does normally a pretty good job of staying inside out on defenders. But with that situation where you're really on the island, you have to force them to go around you up to the outside rather than to the inside like he was giving up. I do think that there were a couple of plays that were like, he looks like a rookie. But for the most part, he looks really solid in pass protection to me. Um, so I think the pass game will be fine. And I think the run game has enough like smoke and mirrors and different concepts. And I think the tight ends and like the wide receivers and most of the other offensive line is run blocking really well right now. and that's
Mhm.
giving them a really effective ground game. Along with, I thought Chase Brown was incredible watching back.
Mhm.
Um, I thought I thought he earned more reps, and I think he earned that each week after week one. Week one, I wasn't, I didn't think he played that great. Week two, thought he was good. Week three, thought he was great. So I think you just keep increasing the load there until you get back to a point where it's like that might be too much for him. Then we can shrink that load back down, or maybe when it gets to like 50-50, because I don't think they want to go above that with him. But he looks really nice, especially when there are some runs where he is one on one with a defender who's unblocked and he makes a miss and can gain an extra 10 yards. That's a sign of a great running back to be able to make that guy miss and keep going. That's what this team's kind of missing. It's something that Zach Moss probably doesn't give you consistently. He's able to do it sometimes, but I don't think he has the juice of Chase Brown.
That's why when everyone's hammering on Zach Taylor after that Monday Night Football game and just upset with him, I'm like, look, Zach is on the off. He is the head coach. I 100% understand, but at the same time, the offense, they had a really good game, and
Yeah.
they're getting it together. Dan Pitcher behind the scenes, Zach Taylor behind the scenes, and I don't know. I like this offense right now, and I think it can only get better. And that's what's really exciting about the balance between Zach Moss, Chase Brown, Amarius Mims getting another start out there. We'll see what that looks like with the offensive line and the protection in Carolina. But Jermaine Burton continues to get his confidence built up while he's out there, and they're trusting him. I mean, Trenton Irwin, one thing that we didn't even talk about on the podcast, and we thought it was maybe a possibility last week, but making him inactive, I thought, whoa, they really do believe in putting Burton out there, and that this is probably what they're going to do going forward unless there's an
To be
injury.
fair, was it for Burton or was it for Yosifas? Because it felt like Burton still played his like five
He did
snaps.
play very
Yosifas
minimal
played.
snaps. I guess
Yosifas
maybe
just
more of
played
a
everything.
Yoshi. Yeah, maybe more of a
Yeah, I
Yoshi.
think it was. I think it was just like, look, Yoshi's earned it. He scored 2 touchdowns in that Chiefs game, and they said, put him out there for all those snaps. Like Irwin's disappointed he hasn't played up to where we expect, and Yoshivash has exceeded that. And then I think he exceeded it even more, despite only scoring 1 touchdown in this game, just because between the 20s, not inside the
Red
20s,
zone.
he, yeah, not the red zone, the other area, he was really good. And that is probably the first time probably the first time in his career, other than maybe that game against Cleveland, that I remember thinking like he's not just like an awesome red zone threat.
Yeah.
He was looking like a very good third tertiary target just in general, just a guy that you could go to when Higgins and Chase are not available to you.
Which is a really big positive for them and what they needed on this offense. So we'll see what that looks like for me. I'm really hoping they continue to build off of that because I think if Joe Burrow and the offense has a performance like they had on Monday Night Football, they should be able to win this game. But when you think about this offense against the Carolina Panthers defense, what are you expecting?
I mean, I expect the firework factory to show up again. This is a defense that hasn't been very good. They played a little better against the Raiders than they did in the past couple of games, but they were like all-time bad before that. They're without Derek Brown. Who's their best player on defense? Probably J.C. Horn, and that's fine. And then who's your second best player? And then I can't really name who that might be. I think there's just a lot of holes. It's clearly a rebuilding defense. Without Derek Brown, this defense is just tough. Their best pass rusher is Jadeveon Clowney. 100% watching. I think that is definitely their best pass rusher, and to me, that is a sign of like, yikes. Like, not that Clowney stinks.
No, no,
Like,
no.
if,
Look, I had
if Clowney gets a
PTSD.
sack this game, I'm not thinking like, wow, I can't believe they did that. But just in terms of Clowney, to me at this point in his career, is a guy that he's a mercenary and he's like a third edge rusher. He's like a guy that's maybe 5 sacks in a good pass rush rotation. It's just like he was last year with Baltimore, where he's not the best. That was Metabike. Probably not the second best over Owe, but he might be the third best pass rusher on that unit. This one, he's the best pass rusher on the unit now that Brown's down, and that's tough. That's a tough way to live. I thought it was interesting. They don't blitz a ton, but when they do blitz, it's almost never an all-out pressure. I thought that
Hmm.
was interesting because I watched. I was like, they're not zeroing any of these quarterbacks, and maybe they will this week, just to prove me wrong. But on NFL Plus, you can sort by blitzes. I watched all 27 plays. 26 of them were 5-man rushes with zone coverage behind it of some sort, were fire zones. So that's above a 95% chance that when they blitz, it's a fire zone of some sort. And the one blitz they did have was in the high red zone around the 20-yard line, and the cover zero that they had. And that is common because they want to kick you out of field goal range, or at least make those field goals really difficult. So like that area from, I don't know, the 35 to the 25, 20, that's an area that I think cover zero becomes very prevalent. Just like get a sack and let's kick them out of field goal range so they get 0 points on this drive instead of 3 or 7. Um, but that also, it kept getting picked up and they were just getting gashed because middle of the field's wide open. You
Mhm.
try to match with guys as you go, but you just down a guy in the back end. That's a tough way to live. Nick Scott going to start this game and
Ooh, reunion.
reunion, and
It
he
just
had a in the one blitz I watched, he had a pass breakup on a Taysom Hill deep shot, and he had a very fun celebration. So glad he's having fun. Good for him. I don't know if you're going to trust him to be a safety, go over the top of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in this game. We'll see.
hopefully.
Maybe he only plays well when there's no pressure. He steps in as a backup because he was pretty good in that Super Bowl run. But outside of that, whenever he's been like the named starter at the beginning of the season, hasn't been great for him. But he wasn't named starter this year, so maybe that's like the reverse psychology. And no pressure. He gets to go into those games, play well. I don't know. We'll see. But I just, I don't know. You would have to fall really flat to not do well against this defense to me.
Anything is possible is the way this season is going. But at the
That's
moment,
fair.
I mean, you look at every game. I mean, even Jamar Chase said he's like, I don't feel like we're in a slump. You know, like we're in these games every single time. I mean, the only one this offense did their part on Monday Night Football. This offense did a good job in Kansas City. Defense did a good job in Kansas City. Week one, not so great. Not so great. Offense couldn't get anything going. One pass for a touchdown would have changed that game. One less fumble, would have changed the game. And it just that's the way it rolled for the Cincinnati Bengals. When we talk about a little bit of luck in football, they didn't get lucky. Those 3 games, they didn't have much luck in those, and this one was where they can capitalize, where they can get some, life back into this season because there's 14 opportunities, and this is one of them. And one thing this team needs right now is a win to just change everything on both sides of the ball. And I think this is the perfect opportunity with going to Carolina. I'm not counting them out just because Andy Dalton is back there. He had a great game last week. When you think about Andy Dalton outside of what you watched in the game last week, but just overall, we'll take away the defensive line right now and to be determined on if Trey Hendrickson is going to be out there. But when you think of the other position groups out there, Deontay Johnson, he had mentioned, hey, I'm going to play. He's dealing with a groin injury. He's been out the last 2 practices, did not practice today. I think that's something to monitor. This team can run the ball. And obviously, that's something that could be a factor. Will they be able to stop the run? What does that look like with Hubbard on the ground? This offense versus the Bengals defense, even with some of the injuries, what are you expecting?
Uh, I I think they'll score. I don't think that this will be a game where the Bengals keep them under 20 points, even though I said that's possible. I think that is possible still. I'm giving my prediction. I'm not saying this is 100% fact, but if I had to
Mhm.
guess, I think they're going to end up scoring over 20, somewhere from that 20 to 30 range. I think it'll look pretty solid. I do think that they'll get a turnover on Dalton. And I also just think just watching Dalton for years, you
Mhm.
can kind of bait him into some conservative decisions on third downs. So if you get into those situations on third down and you make tackles, it seems like in every other week thing that they will tackle, or maybe they'll just tackle against the Chiefs. I think that's a big issue here right now. Where can they make tackles? I don't even think, other than the running backs, are there guys? I mean, I guess Xavier Legette, that was kind of his calling card, was being able to run after the catch, and he'll probably get more run in this game than he has in
Yeah.
the past. Jonathan Mingo, I don't know. I He's a guy that's like a useful role player, but then he got drafted in the first 2 rounds. It's like, oh, okay, that's kind of tossed into this. I don't really have the juice for that. And I liked him back when he was like a 5th round projection. Then I was like, I think he's like a round 3 type. And then he went the second round. I was like, he's not a premium player type. Um, one of those two is going to get plenty of run in this game. I don't I don't know if either one has done that well this season, but I'll just say I think that if you can tackle them, you can get out of some third and mediums, third and longs, just because I think Dalton is willing to kind of check that below the sticks and not push the ball down the field on third down when he doesn't have to. Uh, but I also think that when your only pass rusher is Trey Hendrickson, the cat's out of the bag in terms of how do you slow that down. You just double him every snap, and these other guys just kind of run in place, do the running man as they attempt a bull rush, make no movement whatsoever, and the ball can take forever coming out of there. Maybe Lou's going to heat up Dalton like he didn't Daniels. I think that's very possible, just in terms of Dalton's not mobile, so you're
Mhm.
not too worried about that on the back end or trying to devote resources to stopping his running ability. And Lou has been willing to pressure guys in the past. I think that's something that you could criticize him about in that Washington game, although he didn't get into a ton of third and long situations, and he did send blitzes during those situations. We know from 4th and 4. You got to tackle them. When you send blitzes, you still got to be able to tackle because Dalton will not just sit there and take the sack. He's going to get the ball out, like I was saying, being conservative. All this is just to say I think the run game will look pretty good. I think they end up scoring like 24 points. Not to give away the preview, but I think they'll get some, but it won't be as bad as it was last week.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, you can look at other guys, and I do. I've said it plenty of times on this podcast over the last couple of years. Is it's such a domino effect when your defensive line is dealing with the injuries to the other position groups. But guys like Geno Stone, look, I know he's known for not being a great tackler. He's going to have to tackle. Some of these guys are going to have to tackle while they're out there. Dax Hill, you want to see a little bit of a bounce back game from him. I'm team Dax Hill. I love seeing him out there at corner, but this is a game for him to step up. Cam Taylor-Britt, just with your cornerback room being on these wide receivers to be determined on who's out there as far as their starting wide receivers, but step up. Your two good corners, or at least Cam Taylor-Britt, I would say is one of the top corners and can be one of the top corners. Go out there and play this game. If you have other injuries in other areas of this team, Joseph Asai, you want the opportunity. This is a big year for you. You want to get paid in the offseason from another team? Step up, get to the quarterback, put pressure on him. If Zach Carter's out there, which I'm gonna guess he's gonna be out there, put pressure on the quarterback. And we'll see what that looks like overall. But it's unfortunate that they're dealing with injuries right there, but every team deals with them. And we'll see what that looks like if Sheldon and BJ are back the following week. But right now, it's Bengals, Carolina. This team is desperate for a win. I would say a must win if you have any hope on making a postseason, even though Joe Burrow was asked about that twice. And he's like, look, that's further from my mind right now. And I totally understand why. Nothing but the division, all of that back of his mind, all of it is winning a football game right now. And this team needs one. And we'll go ahead and give our score predictions in this game. I know you said 24 for the Panthers. What are the Bengals going to do?
I think about 31. Like, I think the firework factory continues. They score over 30. They win the game. They win their first game of the year. I'm not willing. Now, if they lose this game, I don't know. Next time I'll pick them to win because
I can't, because you got Baltimore coming to town the following week.
Yeah, you can't blow every game and then still be considered a really good team. But I still consider them a good team. So I'm not willing to just move them to like, oh, this team stinks territory. I think I'm willing to hang on to the prior of how I thought the season was going to go up until now. So I think 31-24. I think the Panthers are a pretty good offensive day, but the defense just doesn't have the horses to hang up with a Bengals offense.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with 21 for the Panthers. I do believe that they're going to be able to score. Maybe Andy Dalton has, good back-to-back weeks. He's in the 300s. If he's not, they can run the football. And I'm expecting that to be successful for them. I do think the Cincinnati Bengals offense continues to just build off the different playmakers they have out there. Maybe they get team more involved this week. We'll see what that looks like. Or maybe it's a Jamar Chase game. Jamar did say, look, that it was kind of refreshing to have that game that he had on Monday Night Football after the first 2 weeks because he wasn't having fun out there. And it was so good to just see him back in the end zone. So we'll see what that looks like for the wide receiver room. Maybe they'll continue to run the ball, but I think this offense is going to be able to still make it a game and make it 28-21 for me. I don't know if they get to 30. If they do, awesome, fantastic. Just go get the win, get out of Carolina healthy, and get ready for some AFC North football, because not to look too far off what the Cincinnati Bengals are doing, but if you look at the AFC North picture overall, yeah, I think the Steelers will probably win again this week. The Cleveland Browns, I don't know. I don't know about them. And the Baltimore Ravens, they play the Bills. This would be a perfect opportunity for the Cincinnati Bengals to get one on. be even if the Bills end up beating the Ravens. You're 1-3 with one of the I still feel like is a good team in the AFC North and the Baltimore Ravens. You face each other the following week. It's a huge matchup and time for this team to rebound. But first, Carolina, you got to take care of business. If you don't, the season is, I don't even know if I can call it on life support, but it's hanging on by a thread.
I mean, like, yeah, you're not out till you're out, but at the same time, yeah, it becomes real unlikely that you make a big run like that. Where you're hoping for a 10-3 run when you're 0-4. Like that just becomes pretty unrealistic. Which also 10-4 when you're 0-3 sounds pretty unrealistic, but
Yeah.
I think it's more possible than when you start pushing that further and further into being more difficult. But they're not out of it until they're out of it. But yeah, 0-4 would be kind of just until they win 4 in a row to match that back up. You
Yeah.
would kind of be like, yeah, let's see how the young guys are playing. I mean, the guys will be on this team next year.
Yeah, I mean, it really could be getting into that. So this one, I do feel like it could be a huge confidence booster for him. Look, we could be at a point in the season where we're going to look back on week 1, 2, and 3 and say what could have been for the Cincinnati Bengals in so many ways. But hopefully this is a chance for them to build on it because, again, yeah, you play one of the easiest schedules, but you still have all your AFC North games. You still have some battles that you're going to see in regular season. And I wouldn't say any game is easy and you should overlook it. And that is including the Carolina Panthers right now. So we'll see what it looks like. It would be fun to talk about a win on Sunday. So I'm really hoping the Bengals can get one done in Carolina. But 28-21, and you said 31-24?
Yeah.
All right, we'll see what happens. Make sure you check out Mike's work. He has a great piece on Amarius Mims over on All Bengals. Follow his Twitter account, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson. Thank you for listening, too. It's always game day in Cincinnati.